Right. So, yeah, we had this discussion as we've already started, and when it comes to how you view your position now, like having this baby and seeing it grow, and how many subscribers are there on YouTube right now? There were a lot.
There are a lot. I actually don't know, because it just kind of went out of control, but I don't actually know how many right now, but a lot, like 70,000 maybe.
Okay. Yeah, like I was surprised.
Yeah, me too.
So you said also, you phrased it in an interesting way, that it went out of control. Is this how you feel about this kind of right now?
I just feel like it started as research, but that there's always been, I write books and things, right? And so
Okay.
I want to communicate with people. So it's not that I was just thinking of it, okay, it's just research. It was like, I want to share it because I think that the truth is a lot of the ideas I'm working on in the philosophy and the books are just very hard to express, and trying to make all the different connections across them. It's very hard to just say that to someone. So I thought, okay, I could demonstrate it through these conversations, because if you really look at all the conversations, you can find all the links. And in the books, I'm doing that in a different way, but I wanted to try to perform it, but not as an act, as here are all the conversations I'm having. So maybe in the future, if you read the book, you can look back and go, oh, okay, now I see the things. And also just because this whole idea of like giving credit where credit is due, you know? Because a lot of, nothing comes new, right? When you work on some philosophy or a new thing, you probably know this too with your science. And when people invite me on other podcasts, and I feel like I'm saying all these ideas, and you can't put little references to all of them and like quote everyone. And with the podcast, I just thought, or the channel, I thought, well, this is just, you can see clearly where the ideas are coming from. I'm putting them together, but it's a wide spectrum across all these disciplines. And then it just became popular, and I don't know. I think it might, to be very honest, and maybe I'm being a little, I think the title is just really good, Love and Philosophy. And I think people just click, that they just click, because, I want to think, oh yeah, they really love all this philosophical, neuroscientific kind of smorgasbord content, but part of me thinks it's just very easy to subscribe to Love and Philosophy, because who doesn't want Love and Philosophy? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say I am quite sensitive to mimetic potential of this is actually the case. I think like it is a really good meme, Love and Philosophy, in really attractive for a lot of people. So, and it seems it's successful.
And it's kind of across the board. I think a lot of people probably just click without, it could relate to a lot of different people. And actually it does, because, a lot of the conversations are, sometimes we're talking about design, and sometimes we're talking about the hardest neuroscientific ideas. So for me, it all connects, but I'm not sure if it all connects. I'm not sure if that's obvious to people who listen. I really don't know. I get a lot of emails, and they're very supportive, and that helps me keep going. But
oh, that's always nice to have, right? I think that's the reward. Like at this point, I think that's I guess a big part of like what keeps this going. I don't know how do you experience it. But I guess like you've mentioned before on our more informal discussion about this aspect of responsibility, this being a sort of responsibility right now. And with this kind of responsibility, I guess, the emotional cost, the time and energy cost is much greater. So it has to be balanced out in some way. And so I think from an outsider perspective, what I see, let's say from that perspective, is only what is being put out there. And there's all these kinds of interconnections that keep on going, because I've also like doing this episode with Yogi, like doing these other episodes that I've also preparing.
Which is so great. I'm
Podcast.
so glad that happened, by the way.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it can seem like this peak of the iceberg, this transient moment that, oh, this thing got out and it's artifact and you can see it publicly. But actually, there's so much attached to that. There's so many conversations attached to the conversation that is already there on the episode, between email threads and whatever, and other kind of calls and conferences, or just like coffee kind of conversations.
Yeah. I was wondering if it'd be that kind of experience for you too, because yeah, as you described it, is for me too. It's not a little one thing that's put out. I think that's the nature of what we're trying to do, too, which is still, there's only 55 episodes, but it is about conversations. And there's not a single conversation I've had that didn't open up new threads in my life, in all those different ways you were saying. So,
Yeah, and I guess when you have enough of them, there's always like this network gets more and more complex and expands. And yeah, it is not very transparent to anybody. For example, as a podcast listener, especially for people who are really into podcasts, I'm really into podcasts. I actually get a lot. I'd say like I get a lot of my information from podcasts as much as I do from texts. I really work in that way, but especially with podcasts, because there's this aspect of content creation. You get this parasocial relationship, like I guess like there's this dynamic between listener and audience, but there's all this whole world of interconnections that already exist. This is not just like one-to-one conversations that and just end there. So yeah, like it. This has also transformed my perspective when it comes to stuff I've already listened to, or other kinds of podcasts, other kinds of content creation in general. I'm like, okay, what happens with all these networks that are invisible?
Yeah. I think that's a good point, and it's good to talk about that. I mean, I was just thinking, even after you had your conversation with Yogi and I talked, and, that even informed that, which we would already have done, but it's like, yeah. And I think a lot of podcasts right now and a lot of people in the world feel the way you do, in the sense that it is becoming the way we get a lot of our information. And it's kind of weird that it's this long form thing often. You have to kind of invest time in it, but you want to, and there's a personal side to it. And yeah, you don't necessarily see that at first, but I don't know about you, but if you really stay with podcasts, I think you do start to see that relationship a little bit, right? I mean, maybe not in the way that, you're seeing it because you're helping me do the podcast now, but you start seeing patterns, I guess, right? And relationships, and it does kind of open you up to worlds.
It also depends on the kind and the form of the podcast, right? Because there's some that actually are like have this aspect out there, says this, for example, like voicecraft, which I really like, where it is also like this. It's very challenging to do like this, like 3 or 4 people in the conversation. You have the flow between all of these, and you see like the same people coming back and back and back. So like, what changes is not like the person or the one that is invited, but the topic of the conversation. I mean, it can be like the same people, and like there's other ones that I've seen the same person like go over and over and over again, and do a new podcast. For example, like one example is Jim Ratso, and I think that there's a lot of episodes with Jim Caporta. And there's some you can see these relations, you can see like this continuity happen. So I guess it's also a matter of time for this to actually for these relationships that keep on going to come to the surface.
Yeah. there's something different about podcasts which I haven't figured out yet either, in the way that, I mean, often when I'm listening to podcasts, I'm walking or I'm going somewhere,
Yeah.
and it really becomes a part of my day that I look forward to. The having those kind of hearing the meaningful conversations in whatever way. I think one thing I struggle with a little bit is that these worlds can also become very insular.
Hmm.
And I think the reason I struggle with it is because one point of this whole project is trying to open up to a lot of different so-called polarities or worlds or whatever, whether
Hmm.
that's in philosophical community or that's, in different, among different kind of academic disciplines or just whatever. And it's hard. I think it's like, because I'm obviously coming from a certain orientation,
Yeah.
and I can find it's kind of hard, but I wonder with what you listen to with your podcast, do you find that you're listening to, do you think there's other people who are listening to the same podcast as you, or are you more eclectic? Do you know what I mean? Like, is there like a kind of group that listens to these 3 or 4 or 5 podcasts?
That's
Mhm.
interesting. Definitely, I definitely see it in that way because I tend to be the person who's like very cross cultural. Like I'm in various different subcultural bubbles at the same time, and I can go between them like a sort of modern day salmon or so.
Mhm.
I can do that, and I like that, and that's part of, I guess, my
Mhm.
personality. And in doing that, I can actually, it's very clear for me that there's specific uh, m- memplexes or like cultural matrices that are attached to certain kinds of platforms and episodes. For example, with Yogi, I mentioned metamodernism, and metamodernism has that.
Mhm.
There's a few platforms that are for that, and then there's the Game B, and
Mhm.
there's a kind of cluster around that, and then there's like very domain specific stuff. You can be interested in quantum technologies, like that area has like some podcasts around it. Even very niche stuff. So, for example, I've been what I'm drawing a lot of literature from for my PhD is this uh, interdisciplinary kind of intersection and field called computer supported cooperative work. And it's so niche. And it turns out there's a podcast around it. And it's really
Mhm.
important because it is part of the network that has formed around this
Yeah.
community. And
Yeah.
it supports it in a way. Um, so definitely,
Yeah.
I can see these bubbles. Sometimes they also become very insular, and not only in this very domain specific ones. Like even when there's this openness when it comes to the themes that are being explored,
Mhm.
and the kind of people that are being invited. The same with like um, for example, like the range can be very interdisciplinary, but still it can be part of a certain kind of community that has its name and identity.
Mhm.
But I've also seen intersections happen. For example, and also very explicitly to cross pollinate between these different communities. I've seen it a lot happen in this whole like liminal web kind of territory where there is all of these micro niches and they weren't very connected, and there has been a kind of meta effort on a more higher level to actually make these interconnections happen, and even very conflicting ones
Mhm.
sometimes.
Do you have an example? Because that makes sense to me. Mm.
Um,
Or what were you
so
thinking of?
there's I have two very interesting ones. Like
Mhm.
one of them was I remember like how much into the whole game B kind of territory you were. I was this is how I
You mean game B kind of Jim Rutt kind of sense, right?
um
Complexity or
it is
that,
Jim Rat and like it had mostly, let's say,
but this kind of gaming and business and that side of the community, or is it physics and I guess it's all of that, but
for the way I see it, Game B is more like this kind of civilizational level thinking of how our like really naming what the large scale problems
Mm.
are in terms of like this mode of modernity that we used to, industrialist mode of production, neoliberal capitalism, kind of very uh, a line go up kind of resource exploitation, and saying like, okay, maybe we can have a different kind of lifestyle, completely outside of this urbanized bourgeois lifestyle that we're used to and think it's the end of history. This
Mm.
is kind of what Game B is. It's not just like
Yeah.
about some physics, some interesting physics ideas or whatever kind of entrepreneurship. It's kind of
Hmm.
like getting all of that to support um this
New societies in a way. I
yeah
say
like
it sounds
the
utopian,
intellectual
but I mean
backbone
it's
for
yeah,
this
it's
kind of
practical.
transition towards that kind of
Yeah.
possibility.
Hmm.
uh
But anyway, you were saying an example. I just wanted to bring that
yeah.
out.
For example, there was this documentary that came out. I think also like some Vervaeke worked on that for about not documentary, actually it was kind of this animated short. It was like 15 or 17 minutes about
Mm.
Game B, really like describing what it is, which is really
Oh,
nice and neat.
yeah.
But there was a little bit of backlash from this community called Dark Renaissance. That's as a way too naive, way too
Mhm.
kumbaya, and
Okay.
it's kind of like there's some. It seems way too techno optimistic. Like yes, the
Yeah.
solar punk ideals of like we're gonna mix these kind of ideals of rationality with ecological, with supporting ecological systems and living in this close relationship, and then that we're gonna transition to these more cooperative, decentralized modes of governance and organization. But then, where's the psychoanalysis? Where's the kind of deep understanding of pain and suffering in that? Where are all of
Mhm.
these elements? Where is like transgressive art and punk?
Mhm.
It's not in that. It seems to be way too neat and cute. And like I've seen this happen. And then there were some approaches like that. There is a podcast from the Dark Renaissance side called the Techno Social. There were some attempts to bring like people from metamodernism or people who are in this more solar punk kind of style. Then people going back and forth. Uh, I see like the connection hasn't been made totally, but there's always attempts to do that. Like even if there's opposition, like in this case we're talking about a really radical opposition, even
Yeah.
politically.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, and one that's quite important these days.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my
No,
rant on
it's good
this.
you brought all that stuff up because it can get very kind of messy, but I like it when people try to dialogue about it because I can understand, I mean, as you were talking, I'm thinking a lot of people think love and philosophy sounds too sweet,
Yeah,
just even the title. And then, but we were also talking about that's probably why it's so widely appealing,
yeah.
um, or why it easily kind of trends or whatever. So yeah, but when you really look at the content, I mean, it's not so easy and it's not always so sweet. I mean, I do talk about love, but I try to, I really mean it in a almost, sometimes it's not easy at the end. I don't think love is like an easy thing to
Yeah.
talk about or deal with. So it's almost uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Instead of sweet. But your example I like a lot because Game B right now and also Dark Renaissance right now, those are if you really look at people who are engaging with that kind of stuff, it's a lot of very important people in the world in terms of where the world is going. And so I like to think that podcasts, because of the format, can at least is more likely to open up some of those bubbles or
Mm,
get that discussion going than
right. Yeah.
other forms of media, right? Like just if you just watch a documentary on TV or
Mm,
something, you can't just go and start commenting about it. Or I don't know. It feels like podcasts are something is different. Now
yeah.
when you want to research something, including me, and I think you just said you did this too. I often search podcast directories for the subject, because I often find that's going to give me the best overall understanding, and then I'll know where to go deeper and find the books.
Right. Yeah, I also do that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. There's two tangents that I find very salient here. I'm trying to see which one,
Yeah.
what to navigate, which one to follow. So, try to do both. I want to pick up what you said before about like this love and philosophy kind of being in this cute and nice kind of category. But I think like lately, both with my podcast with Johannes, where he talks about tough love,
Tough love. Yeah, that was a good addition.
and with the Mike Brock, which I found this an incredible episode. I really like that. It really felt that it was being right in the middle of the tension, and there was a lot of care in that. There was a lot of openness and humility, but at the same time, it kept being there in this very uncanny spot, and I found this very valuable, and it kept on being there for the whole thing. That's how it felt, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot of time spent in this territory, but by the end of it, you feel like you actually get a lot of value out of being that, especially after with Mike being so articulate, and you just really pressuring him on certain points. How like this, if it is done in a very in that way, it is great. So I wouldn't say it is like very flowers and
No.
but
Yeah, those are the kind of conversations that, I mean, that happen in a natural way, but Mike is willing to go there, right? And he's, yeah, and I mean, but that's also one of the ones that you get pushback on too, which is okay, because usually it's because people haven't listened to it. It's more like the keywords, which is understandable. But I think that's kind of the whole point, and what feels like the heart of what I'm trying to do, and when we're having conversations, me and whoever, is, yeah, because we talked about a lot of hard things in that, very hard subjects, that a lot of them, but it wasn't, but I think it opened up both of us to understand each other more, and those are hard conversations, but they feel very important in a way, and I think they can be very stimulating, and why those happen and how those happen exactly has a lot to do with both people being able to show themselves in an authentic way, which is not easy.
I think that's the value proposition. Love and philosophy as a medium and as an approach, because you can really get into these very hard issues and tensions with love, and we have like through this openness that it can open up this kind of conversations that usually are being done in a mode of frustration and anger and partisanship, which is what is usually the case and what I see and what I'm really tired of, very honestly.
Yeah, I think we all are, no matter where we are right now. But it's hard not to get stuck in that, or you feel like you end up having to defend some side or something, or you get angry, but yeah, I think that's what's in the title that I hope evolves out. I mean, that's the way I mean it, is having critical thinking, talking about difficult things. It doesn't always have to be so emotional. I mean, sometimes with you and Yogi, those are not easy subjects, but you both care about them,
Yeah.
And so you get to a place that's very meaningful in discussing them. That's the love for me. It's, it can be many different things, but I think that's what ends up being a good conversation, is when both people actually care about whatever the subject is. And it's not just, oh, we're going to do some press for my book, which is fine too, but that's kind of not the thing. But you're coming into this, and so we don't have a whole lot of time, and I want to hear, what would you like to do from your point? Because this is an open possibility. Of course, we have this orientation, love and philosophy, but you did something different with yogi, which is wonderful. Do you feel like you can explore other spaces like that, or do you feel do you see the horizon, or are you just kind of taking one step at a time with your contribution?
Like, my initial intention was to learn and to understand this world better, because I've always had this. I had some small experimentations with podcasting and stuff like that, and recording interviews, and also as part of my own research, which involves ethnographic fieldwork. Uh, I do like interviews for that. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and like doing that as part of my research, having to do that again and again, I realized I really like that, actually,
Oh, good. Yeah.
especially like seeing some people who would be very afraid, who have never done this before in their lives. I was doing interviews of agriculture researchers in Greece, locally, various different disciplines. There's people who were like scared in the beginning. And
Yeah.
then after a while, after breaking that, I could hear like such insights and so much like, and them speak with so much comfort. And I'm like, okay, so what if like there's so many people who have stuff to say and they can be incredibly valuable, and it's good for them to be heard. So that's also another motivation. And I have my own kind of uh, uh, preferences in terms of the people who all also think deserve to be heard, and it'd be interesting to explore conversations in this kind of medium. Uh, uh, so yeah, that's how I navigated it initially and to this point still.
Yeah.
And um, I'm not sure. I do not have like a very specific uh project or endpoint to this. But because of what we discussed about this network aspect, I always found out, also found out that this is how you can create an intellectual network, in fact.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Especially because my own work is very eccentric and I tend to have to work with this kind of collage of things. I cannot really fit into a specific discipline or approach or intellectual community that is really localized. I want to be able to uh, create the network that comes out naturally from from all of these sources I'm already trying to collage. And I find this is uh, a very good way to do it. It and I didn't know that, for example, you've initially used it as a medium of research,
Hmm.
and it didn't seem that like it makes sense, but it didn't seem that way. I was like, I viewed it more as content creation, but now I'm like, no, actually, like it is not being recognized as such, but it is very powerful in doing that.
Yeah. 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 I agree with all. I understand all that. And I think, as I was saying, I don't know if it was we were on camera or off camera now, but there's a kind of performative sense of it. So
Mm,
I'm doing it for research, but as I said, I do, I don't always put all the stuff online or,
mm,
up there that's for the research too. I try to make it so people can enjoy it a bit. And I guess, I mean, a lot of these I did aren't, weren't recorded. So,
mm,
but you know what I like what you said is that about with your ethnographic research, I can see that in your questions and also in your patience and the way you listen and pause. I really like that. And for me, when you were describing that, that's a kind of love, that you see that people have so much to say and give if they're ever given the chance. And most people aren't actually,
mm,
in life.
mm,
Somebody doesn't just listen to all this expertise that they've gained over whatever their careers. And that seems, there was something about, I felt like you have these amazing conversations, and don't you want other people to gain what you gained from them?
right,
Even if it's
right.
like five people, but that's, in terms of these threads and the ways that these things spread, the way we've been talking, if you did a great conversation with someone in a very niche field, but 5 people really needed to hear that. That's going to multiply, over lifetimes. So yeah, I mean, for me, that feels like a good kind of basis for conversation, and then how it all evolves, you never know. I had no idea it would go like it is, and I just talked to Tim Ingold, right? So your lines are
Yeah.
weaving together with this right now, and who knows what you do with it or what becomes later, but it seems, there's a lot in common there too, in the way you said. It's a great
Yeah.
research vehicle for sure.
Yeah. And yeah, like for me, I'm also interested in um the whole trajectory. I don't think we'll have time to get into that, but um you've already said that you try to scale it down a little bit, and I'm wondering how this feels from the inside, like this, like understanding that this grows, like how does the growth feel experientially, and how do you deal with that once, as you said, like it kind of has gotten a little bit out of control? uh,
It's a good question, and it would be like a long discussion if I was really going to get
yeah.
psychoanalytic about it, because early in my life, I was around a lot of like really kind of famous people, and I've always had this a bit of a hiding away from anything that looks like it might become really popular. And okay, this isn't, who knows what happens with this? It's like we're having millions and millions of viewers or whatever, but even just 70,000 seems like a lot when you know. But I think that has changed because I was just taking myself too seriously. And I think for me, it's just about having some faith and staying authentic to why I'm doing it. I don't feel very conflicted about that as I did when I was young. I think when I was really young, this is when I was like 18, I wasn't so solid about who I am and what I was doing and stuff. And,
Okay.
and now it feels like as long as I'm doing this from the place that feels authentic, and that means those conversations too, because it's a risk, you put something out there and it's vulnerable and some people are going to love it. Some people probably disagree. Some of the topics are so tough. But for me, as long as I'm doing it from this place of what feels to me now like my research project that is my life, which has to do with all the stuff we're talking about, but love and philosophy sums it up pretty well, then I don't need to know exactly where it's all going to go. I just want to stay open too. That's why when you came to me and we had this discussion about learning, I was like, why not just do it, right?
Yeah.
Just do a show. Because to me, who knows where this is supposed to go? I don't need to control it fully. Yeah. And as you said, all these other threads open up and there's this whole other world around it that you don't see or hear in the podcast. And that feels like the important part. And trying to share that as much as possible with the audio and the video. Yeah, I actually have to go now, but I'm glad you're doing it, and I'm looking forward to the next one. It's coming soon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
It's 2 days
Yeah?
this conversation
Well,
with
I'm sure.
Sabine and Donnelly.
Okay. Well, we can do this again sometime, but it's just good to talk about it. And we'll see what happens, what goes next.
Yeah.
Anything else? I have to go because I have another thing, but anything?
You told me it's just like it's
Sorry.
3 sharp. I'd say let's also schedule for another conversation in the chat, because like this was like a little bit
It was
squeezed.
a lot. That's kind of fun to talk about podcasts too. We didn't expect that, but yeah, maybe we'll just do another one. We'll do some more conversations and see what comes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a good Sunday. Enjoy the sun.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.